You know, it's easy to get caught up in the headlines, the political back and forth when we talk about January 6th. But today, we're doing something a little different. We're going deep, really deep into one officer's story, trying to understand what it was like to be there in the thick of it. U.S. Capitol Police Officer Caroline Edwards.
Yeah, her testimony, her firsthand account,
Uh-huh.
it really gives you a new perspective on that day.
It does, and you know what really struck me? Officer Edwards, she she wasn't a rookie caught off guard. This is a woman 3 years on the force, handled over 300 events, protests, security details, you name it.
Wow, that's a lot of experience.
It is, and get this, she relied solely on Capitol Police intel to prep for events. She wanted to avoid any outside bias, you know?
Wow, so she was going in blind in a way,
Yeah.
just trusting the information she was given.
Exactly, and that's what makes what happened even more, well, unsettling.
That disconnect, right? Knowing what we know now versus what they knew then.
Exactly. Imagine you're getting these texts, calls from loved ones, everyone's worried sick, but you're completely in the dark going about your day. No idea of the chaos that's about to unfold.
It's that eerie calm before the storm, right? We've seen it time and time again throughout history.
It's like, you know, those historical photos or videos right before a major event? Everything seems so normal.
Exactly, and then boom, everything changes.
Like Pearl Harbor, people going about their Sunday morning, no idea what was coming.
Or even 9/11, a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning.
And that's the thing about hindsight, isn't it? It's 2020.
It makes you think, how often do we underestimate risks in our own lives just because we're caught up in the day-to-day?
It's like you can just, feel it in the air,
That shift, yeah.
And for Officer Edwards, as that crowd started to gather, as they started to move towards the Capitol, it became very real very quickly.
And you start to see that reflected in the language, in the chants.
Yeah. And what really stood out to me was this idea, this phrase, "This is our house."
It's about ownership, isn't it?
It is, and it's intimidating, the sense of we belong here and you don't.
It's a way to dehumanize the other side, to justify the violence.
And it escalated so quickly, people tearing down fences, pushing against those bike racks. And then the insults started, things like, "You're Nancy Pelosi's dogs, bark for us."
It's chilling.
It is. It goes beyond just anger, It's dehumanizing.
It's a tactic, and we've seen it before, sadly. In wartime propaganda, hate speech, it's a way to make violence seem acceptable.
And for Officer Edwards, she's right there in the middle of it all, trying to hold the line. Even with all her experience, nothing could have truly prepared her for what came next. It's hard to imagine, the chaos, the noise, just the sheer force of that
The
moment.
adrenaline, the fear.
And Officer Edwards, she's clinging to one of those bike racks, the last line of defense, and then everything goes black.
She was knocked unconscious, right?
Yeah, hit with a bike rack, can you imagine?
The force, the impact, it's hard to even comprehend.
And what gets me is she gets back up.
Wow.
She does, even though she's disoriented, injured, she gets back up and keeps going.
That's incredible. The resilience, the dedication.
It really is, but it takes a toll, I mean,
Yeah.
later on, she was diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury.
A lasting reminder of that day.
It is, and we often forget, behind the uniforms, these are people. They have families, lives, they experience trauma just like anyone else.
And the invisible wounds, the emotional and psychological impact.
Exactly, and Officer Edwards has talked about this, the identity crisis she faced. She couldn't work for months, and being a Capitol Police officer, it wasn't just a job for her, it was.
A calling.
Exactly, and suddenly that was gone.
So what happened next? How did she recover?
Well, she went through months of physical therapy, incredibly grueling, but she was determined to get back to work to serve her country.
That's incredible.
It is, and she found this peer support group, other officers who were there that day.
That shared experience, that camaraderie can be so powerful.
It can, and it helped her process what happened, to heal, to move forward.
And where does she stand now on everything?
It's remarkable. She still believes in peaceful protest, in upholding those rights. But she's also honest about the impact of that day, how it broke something,
Yeah, the sense of trust, the faith in our institutions.
Exactly. And that's what makes her story so powerful, so important, It forces us to confront some really tough questions about ourselves, about our democracy.
If someone like Officer Edwards, someone who dedicated their life to protecting others, can have their faith shaken like that, what does it mean for the rest of us? Where do we go from here?
It's a question we all need to grapple with, and I don't think there are any easy answers. But by listening to stories like Officer Edwards's, by understanding what was at stake that day, maybe, just maybe, we can start to bridge that divide, to rebuild that trust, and to create a better future. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.